I'm Claudine Wong, coming to you from the San Francisco Bay Area. Happy to talk with Art Sutley, who's the publisher of Bar Biz Magazine. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, so it's a rough time. It is a rough time, let's just be honest, with the restaurants and the bars and everyone trying to figure out not only how they're going to make it through what's happening now, but how you come back from this. I mean, has the conversation gotten any easier, or does it just get harder day by day?
No, both actually. I think they see a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still going through a really tough time. Each state we see is continuing to, keep us inside and keep out takeout and delivery still on target for the restaurants. And that's a difficult thing, right? For some restaurants. Some restaurants just weren't built for takeout. They were really in dining establishments. And I think they're having the toughest time because a very small percentage of their dining experience were takeout delivery. So they've had the hardest time to adapt and pivot to this. I think the people who actually had a decent percentage of that was already kind of set up for this and just pivoted a lot easier.
Let's be honest. I mean, we didn't have a lot of time to pivot. I
No.
mean, when they said it was you're shutting down. I mean, if you didn't have a business plan in place, you were kind of, in a tough spot. I want to pull your online version of your magazine, up, Bar Business Magazine. Tell me about, in terms of covering this, how you really do what you need to do to, kind of cover everything that needs to be talked about.
Well, I think this is a task for my editors. My main editor, Ashley Bray, she's the editor in chief of the publication. She has been unbelievable in balancing content. Right, we're talking to people who don't have a huge food program, to restaurants that have a huge food program and not a big bar cocktail program. So we're trying to put up information for both so that they can both try to bridge the gap in getting through this. And you see some of these individuals, like you said, got thrown into this. All of a sudden, every state just unleashed cocktail delivery. And we haven't been prepped for that.
Well, but do you think, I mean, you haven't been prepped for that, but when it comes to alcohol, you talk about the gas stations, they don't make money off the gas, right? They make money when you walk into the convenience store and really, buy your potato chips and your snacks. In terms of restaurants, I love seeing all the people who are saying, I'm getting takeout, I'm trying to support my favorite restaurant. But the bottom line of how much they really have to spend to make it like someone sitting in a restaurant and, really spending some money, alcohol and the ability to sell alcohol in this takeout space is a big part of this.
Sure. I think they had to transform people's customers' brains a little bit, right? Like you were talking about a gas station, that's off premise. So somebody's used to going in, purchasing alcohol or beer and bringing it off premise and enjoying it in their home or on their boat or somewhere else. So on premises, we go into a bar and you don't walk outside with that. So that was a difficult thing for customers now have to view this as somewhere they can go and take away, which we've never done that before. So there were some really savvy bar owners that looked at this and said, wait a minute, liquor stores are killing it right now. They're doing great, but people are passing us by. And it's because they're used to coming up to us to sit at a bar, watch a cocktail be made and drink it on premise. So some have pivoted and actually marketed themselves as liquor stores. And they said, hey, we'll sell you a bottle and a mixer and take it home. And that's how they've been able to support their staff.
Which is fascinating. And one of the examples that you want to point to, it's Mr. Paradise, right? That's the one. Let me pull them up so we can kind of see. This is the front. Tell me about Mr. Paradise.
So they made an interesting play. This was a group that sent us an email like right in the beginning saying, hey, we're switching things up right now. They went in for doing large format cocktails. So you can get some of their best cocktails made for 2 to 3 people to bring home. But then they realized some people just wanted to buy a bottle of vodka, some cranberry to do a vodka cranberry. And they started offering like whiskey ginger ale. And they actually did a really good job of building this great list to actually, utilize. And they're even have gone as far as just having like a beer and wine aisle as well.
So yeah, I went on their Instagram and checked out, this is their, a binge box.
Yes.
Which is I think really interesting, you know. And so they're saying get your orders in, we're making it easy for you, you know, here's what we're serving you, we're going to give you a couple of glasses, you know. I mean, really it is kind of a whole, you know, big
Right.
picture kind of thing.
They did like the full course menu, I would say. They
Yeah.
did their prime cocktails to go. They did some large, you know, large formats. They did bottles like as a liquor store. We have restaurants even functioning as grocery stores because their food doesn't translate well to delivery. So they've had to pivot and do something in order to keep their employees employed and making money, because we will come out of this.
And
And
Mr.
they want
Paradise
their,
is in New York City, right?
correct. Yep.
Yeah. And when we see them there, I mean, a lot of this is, I think, keeping that conversation and knowing your clientele, right? In terms of who they are, what will work with them, you know,
Sure.
making sure, you know, and you can see what you're talking about there, having that liquor store t-shirt, the back of that saying, hey, you know, this is who we are. Think of us, remember us in this space. When you come back out, you know,
Yeah. And
that'll
I think
be,
it was, and I think it was difficult, right? Because if all of a sudden you're told you can do takeout cocktails, you're probably not prepped with the right glassware and
mm-hmm.
excuse me, beverageware, plastic beverageware to do that to kind of to go format. So they were scraping to get stuff together in order to put this program. And in mid-May, I was at a trade show right before this, you know, really kind of exploded, and we were all talking about cocktails to go being a thing for our future. 8 months, 12 months, 16 months out. And all of a sudden it was like in 2 seconds,
But
every state was opening up.
were there hurdles for that though? Because you know, they don't, you know, there could be some people who say, yeah, we don't want it to go, we want to keep it right where it is so we can kind of control
Sure.
that space and make sure the crowd stays in one place. But I think, you know, you saw them relaxing things very quickly, you know, when the world changed.
Sure. I mean, states were 100% resistant to this, and we were working together to really find a common ground so this could be something. And right now it's out there, and you know, the future of what it's gonna, this restaurant industry is gonna open up to is gonna look very different. Um, I don't believe that we're going to open up and someone who has a 250 seat restaurant is going to be told, well, let 250 people right in. There's going to be reduced seating charts. And, you know, when we build a program for a restaurant or bar, right, we build their whole program on how many people can you fit in the restaurant? How fast can you turn those tables over? And that's what tells you what your overhead's allowed to
Yeah.
be. Well, all these restaurants have built where their overhead to be full. And now we're going to tell them, potentially in the future, hey, you might only be able to have 60% of your capacity for a temporary point in time till a vaccination is ready. So it's going to be key for us to fight to keep this cocktail delivery going in order to drive up delivery orders in price-wise to make up for those lack of people in the seats in the restaurants.
Right. Yeah. So a couple of big issues that you just raised, and let's kind of tackle them in, you know, more detail, just individually. You know, in terms of before we open these restaurants back up, the other restaurant you were pointing to is called Mad Priest, and
Correct.
they're
Yes.
in Chattanooga. I'm going to pull up some pictures that we have of them. This is just one of them initially, and I like this post from their Instagram because it addresses a little bit of what you're saying.
Sure.
That, you know, for the last month we've pivoted, done everything we can to keep serving you, keep our staff employed without the renewal of the alcohol to go. And even if they do, we just can't keep this up financially. It doesn't make sense. They were temporarily closed when they posted this,
Sure.
you know, because that is, I mean, the alcohol was pivotal in this
Yeah.
post. You know, they're like, we can't do that. And, you know, this is an exterior of that. I mean, they were trying curbside cocktails. I mean, this is
Yeah.
really representative, I think, of what so many restaurants and bars across the country are doing. They're like, we're going to try everything. And you want it all to work. You want it all to be in this space. This is, of course, when they appeared in the article on, you know, Bar Business Magazine,
Sure.
where you're talking about creativity. But, you know, and I think that's what you guys are trying to highlight, right? But even if you're super creative, it doesn't guarantee it, right? They
Doesn't
tried a
guarantee
lot
it.
of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were being very aggressive. They were doing for their community, they were having bartenders all enter to be into their own little Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game show. And they submitted cocktails, they whittled it down to 10. And then individuals got to order these cocktails and vote on which one was the best, and 3 of the 10 got to actually compete for a cash prize. But I think what this shows is there are essential businesses out there that are trying to continue to be essential, and they still have to close their doors.
Right.
And it's really tough to see that. And that's where the struggle is going to be as this keeps going weeks and weeks and weeks out. We're going to see more of those essentials trying to bridge that gap, but it's just too long for them to get there.
Well, and you talk about inside, right? In terms of this picture from inside their space, right? If you take a bar situation where you've got all these people right here who are sitting at the bar, because that's how we like to do it, and
Sure.
and it's not even the people sitting. I mean, you got a chair, you're a lucky one, right? You're usually
Yeah.
shoved up in between all these chairs,
Right.
and then a few people deep trying to get the bartender's attention. Well, how do you open this space back up in any kind of reasonable way that guarantees you, or even assures you, that you can do business in the same way, 6 feet apart?
It's get bar seating like what you see right there to the left. That's going to be very tricky. Um, we're used to just grabbing a seat or 2 seats if they're open next to somebody who we don't know, either on our left side or
Mhm.
our right side. And then we're also used to, on a busy night, maybe having a seat and somebody coming and order from over back of you. That I don't see that being in the near future.
And we kind of like that. I mean, we kind of like being with a packed house. Like that's usually a good thing. It does change a vibe if you're in an empty bar, and if they're
Yeah,
empty
well,
on
listen,
purpose. Yeah.
the vibe was like the music and also the sound of other people talking, the hustle and bustle.
Hmm.
It made you feel like when you were going out and having an experience, you were having an elevated experience because you were in a popular place.
Right.
It's going to be very different situation when you walk in and everyone's going to be separate, far away from each other, and you have a very empty feeling in a restaurant,
And
and
I
that's
kind
going to
of
be very
kind of
hard to
like
overcome.
that. It's hard for the restaurants to overcome. Hard also for the customers to
Sure.
overcome, because they have to accept that that's the best way to get the job done too.
Yeah, and I think customers are going to need to feel real comfortable when we start reopening. You might be their number 1 spot now, but if you don't make them feel comfortable, they will go to their number 2 spot because they feel more comfortable there.
So in terms of innovation and where we go from here, when people are talking about that comeback plan, right? So it was the can we get through plan, which sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. And if we don't want to see, empty restaurant spots, and we don't, right? We don't want to see those cool spots that we loved, who were just kind of, you know, our favorite go-to place, disappear. Well, then the comeback plan is going to have to look a lot different.
Yeah, and the ones that are gonna really saddle this and take it on are the ones that are thinking about it right now. They're starting to look at their restaurants and saying, okay, I have a really bad plan, a medium plan, and a low plan, which is they're going to be very strict on seating, and they're separating their seats very far, and they're figuring out their capacity. And then there's a mid tier and a low tier, and they are figuring out how to strategically put people. Another thing that I think is going to play a huge role is less contact now with servers and bartenders is going to be key. So technology might start taking a front seat here. I've always been someone that says a perfect balanced restaurant is a little bit of technology, but still has that social interaction and that theater type of interaction of maybe an open type of kitchen and seeing the chefs, or a really great bartender and is doing his amazing shake and really, elevating the vibe in the restaurant, or servers circling tables. That's all part of your experience.
Right.
And that might have to change a little bit now, where we're doing more delivery to the table, maybe ordering from technology at the table. Also, maybe tabbing out, where you can actually tab out from your phone. There are a lot of apps that you can download in restaurants and actually pay without having to see your waitress or waiter again for the rest of the evening.
And do you think, because as we talk about this, I mean, there's the temporary, right? And then we get used to it. And there's been a lot of discussion just in general about how we will live our lives differently after this, and will not want to go back to that. I mean, fortunately, I think that online ordering, the technology exists. We see it at airports, we see it at different types of restaurants.
Sure.
So if we were in a place where you didn't even know how to do that, that would be difficult. But is that something, as these restaurants they have to invest in that technology, invest in changing, kind of the interior. They have to do some little renovation. Are you getting the vibe that people are saying, well, we should do it because if we don't do it, we're not going to survive, or we should do it because this is the new normal. This is the future.
Yeah, and I think those systems can be, you can go all in on them and you can slowly back them down. So you don't always need to have the iPads at the table, but it can still be an intricate part of your inventory system and things like that. So I think they need to start looking at that and starting to put, the initial brain in the business,
Mm-hmm.
and start building the tech out from there. It's going to be necessary when we open up. The customer is going to come out of this a completely different customer, and they need to be ready to service that customer.
Yeah, I feel for them. I was going back to the Mr. Paradise website of what we looked at that business earlier, and because I think in some restaurants too, you wonder in these kind of areas where they don't really have separate tables, they would have to change it around. Maybe you'd see bookings for families to sit together or friend groups that have already like signed
Right.
a waiver, or who knows what they have to do,
Right.
right?
Well,
To stay in small groups so there could be interaction, because what is the point of going if you've got to sit by yourself?
I don't think they're going to redesign like those banquettes. I think what's going to happen is some of that for a temporary point of time is going to turn into just dead space, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
separate people. But I think what you're going to see is any restaurant that has the banquettes on the outside and the tables in the center. Listen, New York, San Fran,
Yeah.
any major city, we're used to dining with tables very close to us because that square footage is so high for the restaurant owner. They try to put in as many tables as they can. You're going to see a lot of those tables come out and a lot more space open up in between tables.
The final point I want to kind of get to is, because all the states are doing this differently, because they all are facing different numbers, different places, different, one governor could decide to shut things down again. Obviously New York is its own, we're hoping that the numbers, keep going in the right direction. But when you still have hundreds of people dying every day, that recovery is going to look a lot different. How do you coordinate this as a industry so that it makes the most sense, and that it's efficient for people, and that they can all learn, especially if, I would think even the trade shows where people just generally share ideas, and how you get together again in those spaces.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it's always, this industry has always been a challenge when it comes to state by state regulations. This is why I probably get up at 6 a.m. and work till 10:30 at night in a situation like this, because I have people talking to me from so many different states that need help, their businesses. So I have to relearn what the nuances of that state are. It makes it so challenging. Listen, the federal government's going to release a list that's going to say, hey, these are the things we need you to start doing. It's not going to apply to every business. It's not going to apply to the business that's a railroad bar where they have a very long bar,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of seating in the back, but there's, you can only fit like 3 or 4 people behind you because it's just a row of seats. Like, that type of establishment is going to have a very difficult time working through this. You have a big square open restaurant, you can start shifting and moving things towards the center or towards the outside. So it's really going to be a difficult thing to go state by state, and then different type of establishment to different type of establishment.
Realistically, how many businesses do you think are going to survive? The restaurant industry is a tough business already. I don't know if the stat of 1 in 10 survive is correct, but that's the one that always goes around in the circles, that only, on a good day, 1 in
Sure.
10 restaurants make it. So what happens? What do you think the realistic look at, if we're talking about summer being the time when we're even trying to get our country looking somewhat similar to what it used to?
Yeah, so this is the real shame, right? The last 3 years, we've had an amazing growth trajectory in the restaurant and cocktail and bar industry as a whole. The fact that consumers know as much as, nightlife experts and cocktail experts, that's amazing. They're coming out, they're supporting, and this has really kind of changed the game. The National Restaurant Association released some stats. They did a survey, and another group did a survey, and they were very similar. And they basically said, from their survey group, about 11 to 12% were not going to reopen, permanently closed by the end of this month. Now, if you apply that to over 1 million bars, restaurants,
Hmm.
dining establishments out there. And we're talking over 100,000 restaurants that will close before we even reopen.
Ugh,
And now there's a whole nother challenge there, which who makes it to the reopening, who's not ready for this. And there'll be some thinning of the herd, unfortunately, in that. And I hate to say it because I love this industry and some of these bar owners
right.
are my friends and they are struggling right now and we are doing everything to help them. And I think it's really up to the customers. I think when they feel safe, they need to come out and they need to support these individuals because they are really, really weathering a nasty long-term storm right
Yeah.
now. We
It's
didn't hit a wall. We didn't hit a wall. We hit a really long speed bump.
which sometimes is, I don't know, is the length of it worse than a one big strong hit? It all feels really painful. Customers, I guess you're telling them you love them. If they're still open right now, patronize them any way you can, and then continue to try to figure out your way of supporting, even if you don't feel comfortable going back in when they open up. I would say keep getting that takeout or those
Yeah.
or that alcohol to go. I guess.
Yeah. And you know, and really look at the independent guy. If you're when you're ready to come out, look at the local guy that maybe only owns one or two establishments. That's the guy that needs it the most. And that's not to say chain restaurants don't need it, but like that's the entrepreneur, small business, neighborhood person that needs
Right.
their customers to come in.
And that's the one that's going to go first. If you have to pick your battles, you should be heading in there first, because you'll probably have more of a short-term impact, which is to get over that speed bump. They are the ones that are going to need it the most.
100%.
I wish we had better news, but Art, we're going to do an interview in a couple of months, I'm confident, where we can talk about.
Can we do
Yes.
another one when we come out of the positive? Because it has been so difficult over the last couple of weeks is where I'm really trying to highlight the positive of who's
Yes.
making it through it, but there's just so much toughness happening right now.
There is tough news, and yes, absolutely. We will have a conversation when there is good news and when that scale tips that way too. I mean, people want to hear it. They want to know how they can help as a community to get everything back. And New York and its bar and restaurant scene, just like San Francisco and and even in so many small towns across the country, the place, their watering hole, right, is the place people like to congregate and talk and share in so many different ways. So Art Sutley, the publisher of Bar Business Magazine, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate the chat.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And we'll talk soon in better days. Yes.